on here. Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. There we are. Perfect. We are rolling on Facebook and Instagram. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning. Hope you all had a wonderful, refreshing weekend to get rolling here on this new week, the last few days of June as we enter a new month of July. I am Dr. Alexis Morgan. I am one of two lead faculty for clinical management of the fitness athlete, pregnancy, and postpartum. And I'm really excited today to discuss with you all some differences with exercise, specifically throughout pregnancy, throughout the last several decades. So it's been really interesting. If you've heard Christina and I talk about the research, A, you know that we get really excited about research. But B, we get so excited because it feels like all of this research is so brand spanking new. And I wanted to just kind of zoom out a little bit and see, well, how new is this? You know, we keep seeing the first of its kind, a pilot study here, a pilot study there. Christina just talked about the study that she's involved in, that we're all involved in, and that is to promote, to understand rather, lifting in pregnancy and how that does change, or does it, delivery outcomes, birth outcomes. And so these are just the first of their kind. And so it makes you wonder, like, well, what have we been doing? What have we been looking at for the last 100 years? Well, if you are very curious about that, like me, stick around. We are going to be talking about that this morning. And in light of all of the research, I also want to pull just some other context in for you all. So we will actually start, there's not much there, but in like the 1800s to the 1900s, early 1900s, over 100 years ago, we were instructing pregnant women to use extreme caution to avoid fatigue and overexertion. Use extreme caution. There was a lot of fear around the pregnancy condition and what's going on, and we're not really sure. We don't want to have any exertion, so we just need to not really do anything. Context for you all, in 1900, in the Olympics, that was the first year that women were in the Olympics competing ever. So as we're recognizing that all of this research is new, we're really realizing that it's just new for women in general to be involved in sport and in recreational activity. So fast forward, we're going to dive into the 1950s here, where there is a medical text, the antenatal and postnatal care, and it discouraged violent exercise. What in the world is violent exercise in the 1950s, where most of the people were doing calisthenics, they were hula hooping, doing yoga, biking, and dancing? What in the world was violent exercise? Well, that was considered tennis, because you are using your core violently, horse riding, swimming, and cycling. Gentle exercise was prescribed instead. Guess what that was? Light housework and easy walking. We've all seen the 1950s images of this, and we realize that there was a very different culture in the 50s for women. And there was kind of that gender norm of the woman is doing the housework. And it's very interesting to see that same thing play out in medical text. So this was not just like a societal construct. The societal construct influenced the medical recommendations from the physicians. In the 1950s, even still, we only had like 10% of the athletes at the Olympics were female. So it's still, as far as like a global standpoint, it's still very rare for women to be in sport. And so a lot of concern still exists. We move into the 60s, and we got to love this physician for at least for what I have read on him, which is he finally is like, hey, what's going on here? Why are we not talking more about the science? Why are we saying that pregnant women need to use common sense when pregnant, but we're not really defining common sense? Like, common sense is not science. Let's actually put some terms to this and let's figure this out. And at the same time, there's like this rise in feminism. And in 1967, I don't know if you've all seen the story, but this is a wonderful, interesting story. You should go and look at it. But the first woman ran in the Boston Marathon, and it was illegal for her to run. She sneaked in to run the marathon, and actually had a pretty alarming situation occur in the middle of the race when she was found out that a girl was running. So all of this is going on. We're starting to question closely held beliefs about women in exercise, about pregnancy, and this whole, all of these ideas and thoughts are kind of starting to shift around. And then that kind of moves us into the 70s, where, of course, like, this is like the health and fitness boom, right? And we're starting to see the first studies in the 70s are showing, hey, there are actual benefits of exercise during pregnancy. Just take that in for like just a second. We've only known in the literature for 50 years that there's benefits of exercise in pregnancy. And again, let me give you some exercise context. In the 70s, what were they doing? Jazzercise, choreographed exercise to music, right? So that was the social construct around exercise. And we only have known that this is good for 50 years. And not only that, we've only known that it's not horrible and it's not the worst thing ever, and it's not going to kill the mother or the baby if there is exercise. And by the way, we didn't actually really fully have a conclusion here in the 70s. These are just the first studies. These are those pilot studies and there was a lot of pushback for this. In 1979, this physician, Dr. Carl Schaefer, wrote an editorial in JAMA talking about women running marathons while pregnant. He suggests that it actually could cause birth defects or death. So we're seeing this like black and white, these totally different messages coming in the 70s. Kind of the old school thought versus the new school, the new wave of feminism. And there's a lot of confusion in the population, in the normal population. And there's a lot of arguments in sports science and in medicine. again, around this time, this is when Title IX was passed in 1972, making it to where there is equal opportunity for women in sport. Then it was turned into law. So again, it's only been 50 years since women have really had the equal opportunity to participate. And participation and cultural norms are what drive the science. And we know that science can be behind all of these changes. And so you start to gather why we still just have so many questions when talking about exercise for the pregnant woman. And by the way, when we're talking about exercise in 2021, we're talking a lot about resistance training, right? About CrossFit, about weightlifting, powerlifting, because that is one of the biggest things that has happened in our current cultural norm. But we don't have all of that research from back then. We're looking at research of simple exercise, of jazzercise, totally different exercise modalities, right? So we fast forward into the 1980s, and we've got who other than Jane Fonda to release a VHS, I wonder if it was VHS in the, anyway, to release video of Jane Fonda's pregnancy, birth, and recovery program. Y'all, if you haven't heard of this or seen this, I had not, go to YouTube and watch the trailer for this video. If you just want to laugh on a Monday morning, this was like very, very popular in the 80s. And this began to shift what we did in pregnancy and in birth and postpartum, because so many women were interested in exercise by this point, which is wonderful from this cultural context. So we've got this popular individual who is pushing exercise for pregnancy, and science is like, whoa, hold up, wait a second. Medicine is like, hang on, you don't know what you're talking about. And so we start to see this again, like even larger rise in research trying to like figure out, okay, what is going on? Again, there's still a lot of butting heads. And it was 1989 when a review came out that said, with good conclusion, that healthy women can exercise at a moderate intensity without risk to themselves or fetus. So this is a good press forward, right? However, it still has a lot of caveats in that it has to be healthy women. And that does not really include any individuals with any type of health complications. And it also is that moderate intensity. And again, we're talking about the 80s. We're talking about Jane Fonda's style of exercise, aerobics. So we have to just recognize those times there. In that same year, that one of the very first case studies was documented on a professional athlete, and she's a runner, and she had a completely uncomplicated, healthy birth afterwards. So again, N=1, but we were pushing this message of we can exercise at an elite level and a high athlete level and have good outcomes. And recognize that is literally 10 years after that editorial that said that running can cause birth defects and death. So we've got like some really, really harsh messaging to go up against. Going into the 90s, we see even more consensus, even more consistency, but continued butting heads. There's professional organizations starting to create areas of specialization, and there's even more conversation and even more people interested in exercise, even more women interested in exercise. But the studies that have all been done really weren't the strongest studies. And so all of that critique was still going on in the medical community. Yeah, you could do it, but it feels really, really risky. And so we have this constant battle. And this is up until the 90s. And so individuals are like, I don't know what to do. Many of them. And especially just in the regular kind of population. And again, in the 90s, we're talking about exercise like Tae-Bo and kind of in the 2000s, the Zumba. And actually in 1998, the Academy of Physicians, American Academy, wrote a paper on recommendations for pregnancy exercise. So, we're thinking, okay, we've had several decades of some research, some consensus, what are we kind of going to see here? Well, the exercises that were recommended, there were 4: walking, stationary cycling, low impact aerobics, and swimming. What are the 4 most pervasive exercises that we see when we Google pregnant women? Walking, maybe with some pink hand weights in their arms, sitting on a bike, doing some simple exercises on the floor, raising their leg up, still doing some Jane Fonda stuff, and swimming, right? These messages are still in 2021 being pressed to our society. And it comes from this place of fear and from this place of, I don't want to tell somebody that they can do something if it could harm them. But when we get into the 2010s, the literature starts to go in the opposite direction. And it's highlighting the risks of not exercising. Context, you probably don't need much. We were all here. Obesity epidemic. We're all seeing this still today. So we're having to, in the literature, go, hold up. Okay, 4 decades, we have seen that there's not been any issues. Now we're seeing this obesity epidemic really causing a lot of issues. We have got to push exercise for pregnant individuals, for families, for the ability to push this forward in children growing up. There was more literature as well looking at higher level athletes. The International Olympic Committee put out a 5-part consensus statement on exercise and pregnancy, and that's for elite and recreational athletes. And we talk about that one specifically, or those 5, in our course. Really great studies, or really great papers rather. And again, what are we talking about as far as exercise goes in the 2010s, right? It's CrossFit. And now today there's more CrossFit gyms than there are Domino's pizzas. CrossFit as a chain has just continued to rise to the top. More and more individuals are doing that. So what do? We do what we've always done, and that is, as society has pressed forward with new exercise, as women have pushed forward with, we are going to participate in this exercise. We love it, and we feel good when we do it. And so then just now, we are getting research about pregnant athletes doing CrossFit or CrossFit style workouts, high intensity interval training, weightlifting, combining all of these exercises, high intensity, right? Oftentimes out in the heat, doing it in a CrossFit gym without air conditioning. So we've got all of these variables that now we're catching up, and we're trying to figure out, again, is this safe? Are they going to be okay? And looking over the past several decades here, and I'm wrapping up. I realize that I'm going over my time here, but looking back over all of these decades, we're seeing the massive cultural shifts, and then the medical kind of following behind. And so ultimately, it is our goal as clinicians to be up to date on this research. We don't want to be 10 years behind. If we're 10 years behind, we're telling individuals to either walk, bike, do low impact exercise, aerobics, or swim. We've got to stay up to date on this literature if we want to meet the needs of these pregnant athletes today in 2021. And so that's exactly what we do in our course. That's exactly why we're pushing this survey. If you have not filled out the survey, please do it if it applies to you. If you are a pregnant athlete who lifted weights during your pregnancy, please consider filling this out. If you are part of a gym that has pregnant athletes in it, please post it in your Facebook group. Please push this. We really need to push the literature forward. And this is where it starts. It starts with this survey. It starts with asking questions about how did your experience go as a pregnant athlete who is lifting heavy weights. We've never seen this in the literature before. We need to know more. And this is how we do it. We push it forward. We ask questions about how it went so that we can then show there is safety, and we can then study it to an even deeper degree. Thank you all so much for joining me this morning. I enjoyed talking with you all about the history of pregnancy exercise through the decades. And if you have any questions for me, I would love to continue this conversation. You can comment below or you can message us. And with that being said, I'm going to sign off of here. Happy Monday. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I should tell you, if you want to sign up for our cohort, we are starting the new cohort today, the June 28th cohort. If you want to sign up, there are still some spots available, and we would love to have you. So message us, and we can send you that link as well. Okay, signing off. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.